Hi, this is Whitney Kurtz Ogilvie, Academic Writing Specialist and Lecturer for the UK College of Nursing and for the UK Healthcare Nurses. Today we're going to talk about the always thorny, always complicated topic of APA style. And you should see a PowerPoint slide on your screen. APA style frequently asked questions. That's just what this is. It's the most common errors and the most common questions that I see every day in my role as writing specialist. So I may not cover everything that you want to know, but I am going to cover also some online resources that you might want to use. So if I don't get to your question, you'll be able to find an answer there. So let's just click through, and these slides are a little bit congested. I apologize for that. That's because I did originally design this PowerPoint to be read rather than presented because it was designed for the Canvas Writing Resources site. So apologize if the slides are a little bit busy. Just a quick intellectual property disclaimer. This is my intellectual property, and I ask that people, if you want to use or share this PowerPoint in some capacity other than just watching it for your own educational use, please ask my permission if you don't mind. And you can email me at whitney.ko@uky.edu in order to do that. That's whitney.ko@uky.edu. Otherwise, please don't use any part of this presentation or the presentation as a whole in any capacity other than simply watching it to learn. Thank you so much for that. So we're going to cover a whole bunch of different stuff today. Titles, some tips for making a good title. We're going to cover formatting of title pages and running heads, and in-text citations, quotes, reference lists, all kinds of stuff today. So first, let's get into titles. The APA handbook tells us that a good title concisely summarizes the paper's main idea. From the 6th edition handbook, the title should be a concise statement of the main topic and should identify the variables or theoretical issues under investigation and the relationship between them. A good title, like a good abstract, should be able to stand by itself and still make sense, meaning you should be able to read that title and be in no mystery whatsoever about what that paper is going to be about. As with everything else in writing, simplest is usually best. You don't want to try to get too fancy with your title. So one example of a good title, and this is from the APA handbook, might be Improving Access to Treatment of HIV/AIDS in a Rural Setting. And you can see that that actually tells us a great deal. It tells us the general topic to be investigated, which is treatment of HIV and AIDS, and it tells us the setting. It tells us very specifically what it is about HIV and AIDS treatment that we're looking at, which is improving access to treatment. So it's a nice title. It's concise, it's simple, it's clear, gets the job done. So some tips to remember for titles. First, you want to avoid unnecessary words. According to APA, the words results and methods should not usually be included in a title. You want to try to just be simple and concise. Avoid abbreviations except very common and very obvious ones. Obviously, everybody knows what HIV and AIDS are, unless you literally spent your life in the forest being raised by wolves, you know what that means. But for everything else, avoid abbreviations. Now, an abbreviation like DNA is probably okay. The CDC maybe would be okay because, you know, most people certainly in nursing are going to know what that is. But beyond those really, really obvious ones, you're going to want to avoid that. APA also recommends that a title be no more than 12 words long. So that's a good rule of thumb. It doesn't mean you can't go one word over if you absolutely need to, but it's just a good rule of thumb. And the title should be easy to abbreviate in the running head. So there should be kind of a nice little stopping point there where it still kind of makes sense, because normally you can't fit a whole title into a running head. So let's talk some formatting issues. Running heads. In APA style, every paper needs a running head, and if you're in any doubt about what that looks like, you can go and look at a sample paper formatted in APA style. There's a great one on the Purdue OWL, if you see where my cursor is pointing on the screen. There's a sample APA style paper, which is a terrific resource in and of itself for formatting issues especially. The running head and the page number are going to go in a header, and that is crucial. Don't put it as the first line of your actual text. You're going to actually want to put that in a header, because if you don't, if you put it as just the first line of your actual text, then anytime you change something in that paper, if you add a few sentences or something like that, then that's going to mess up your formatting in the whole paper. So it has to be a header. You can click on that link below to see a sample APA style title page. You want to double space your title page. The title should be in upper and lowercase letters, meaning that the major words should be capitalized and the minor words like a and the, of, things like that should be lowercase. It should be in the upper half of the page and it should be centered in the middle. The title should come first on a title page, followed by the author's name, which goes first name, middle initial, and last name. So for me, it would be Whitney L. Kurtz Ogilvie, right underneath the title. And underneath that, you're going to put your institutional affiliation. So that would be University of Kentucky, Good Samaritan Hospital, whatever your institutional affiliation may be. As I said, there's that sample page if you want to look at a title page. So let's talk running heads. And one of the most frequent questions I am asked is, how do I fix it so that that phrase running head only appears on the first page, and from then on it's just going to be my page number? So right here is a quick step-by-step guide to doing that in the newer editions of Microsoft Word. Now, it might not work with everybody's edition of Word. If that is the case, if this doesn't work for you, you can just Google this and it should come up straight away. But in Microsoft Word, most of the newer editions, this is how you do it. You want to go to your View menu. You're going to want to click on Header and Footer. You're going to select that. In the toolbar menu that pops up when you click on Header and Footer, you're going to choose the Page Setup image and then the tab Layout. In the menu under Headers and Footers, you'll click the box that says Different First Page. So that's essentially what it is. You have to select the ability to make your first page different from all the rest of your pages, because that phrase, running head, in APA style is only going to go on your first page. After that, it's just the page number. So in the first page header box at the top of page 1, type running head, colon, and then your abbreviated title. It's not actually going to be in italics. That's just there for the purposes of emphasizing it on this slide. But normally it's just capital R running, lowercase r, h head, colon, and then your title or your piece of a title is all caps. So that's how you do it. And you'll see that when you click on that sample page, a sample title page from the previous slide. So then, once you've done that, you go to page 2 of your document and delete the phrase running head. So that way, on page 1, running head's going to remain there, and only that abbreviated title and the page number will appear on all the subsequent pages. There is a link at the bottom of this slide that you can click on for more information about this. Its source is the APA's official website in their sort of frequently asked questions section, because they get this question a lot as well. So moving on from titles and running heads to in-text citations, this is certainly probably the biggest category in terms of frequently asked questions. In my experience, I am asked about in-text citations on an almost daily basis. So the basics of in-text citations. Use your 6th edition APA style handbook, which is the most recent one as of the publication of this video. And there is a quick reference chart on page 177 that is going to be your best friend when you're writing papers in APA style. So I would, if I were you, I would go to a copy machine and I would make a copy of that thing, and I would put it up on my bulletin board in my study or my office or wherever it is I do most of my writing, because you are going to check that thing on a daily basis when you're writing, okay? If you don't have the handbook, then I've got 2 pages for you to bookmark on your computer. This is from the Purdue OWL, which stands for Online Writing Guide, in case you didn't know. And that website is the bomb. It is amazing. It's a great writing resource. Everybody should have it bookmarked on their computer, and it has a comprehensive APA-style guide. And I mean comprehensive. Like, there's almost nothing in there that's not in the handbook. So it's awesome. And they offer some great guides to in-text citations in APA style. The first gives a basic overview. The second details how to cite various types of sources. It's specific types of sources in the text. So I would save both of those links and bookmark them on my computer because they're going to give you all the information that you need. So let's look at the next few slides and get some examples of some of the trickier types of in-text citations that people ask me about. First of all, how and when do I use et al? First of all, what does et al mean? Well, it's a Latin phrase, et alia, and it stands for and others. So fun fact, in case you didn't know that, now you can sound smart, you know what that means. And the reason why you always see a period after the al is because it is an abbreviation. So et is actually a complete word in Latin. It's just like a little short word like is. But al is an abbreviation for alia. So that's why that's where that period goes. It goes after the al, not after the et. It's a really common mistake I see as well, is people put the period after the et. But no, it goes after the al. So when do you use et al? You use it to cite a source with 3 or more authors in text or in the references list. Okay, so when you've got 3 or more authors, that's when you need et al. It's to prevent you from having to write all those names out every time you cite that source, which would be a huge pain. So how do you use et al? Now this gets a little bit thorny and a little bit complicated, guys, and this is why I would really recommend using that cheat sheet from page 177 of the 6th edition handbook, or those 2 bookmarked websites that I showed you on the previous slide, because this is just hard stuff to remember. But I'm going to go over it with you anyway. One work by 3, 4, or 5 authors. 3, 4, or 5 authors. When you have a work by 3, 4, or 5 authors, the first time you cite the source in the text, you're going to write out all of those authors' names and then the date. As always, you can cite the source in either the text of the sentence or just in parentheses at the end. And so an example of the citation, the names written as part of the sentence for a source with 3 authors would go something like this. Bradley, Ramirez, and Sue, 1999, and you might continue on to say something like Bradley, Ramirez, and Sue, 1999, wrote that kittens are the cutest animals on the planet, right? Which we all know is true. For 4 authors, it would go Bradley, Ramirez, Sue, and Walsh, 2006, wrote that brownies are the most delicious dessert. Actually, it's probably more like cheesecake, but anyway, you get the idea. In parentheses at the end of the sentence, that just means that all the names and the date all go at the end instead of incorporating the names into the actual text of your sentence. Note that even if you're writing the names as part of the sentence, you still have to stick that date in parentheses at the end. But remember, that's just the first time you cite those sources in the text. That's the only time you have to use all of those names, as if it's the first mention of the source. Now, for all the subsequent citations after that, all you have to do is use that first author's name and then et al. And the date. So if you're writing it as part of the sentence, you would say Bradley et al. 2006 wrote that brownies are the most delicious dessert, or cheesecake is the most delicious dessert. If it's in parentheses at the end of the sentence, you could just say, you know, research shows that cheesecake is the most delicious dessert, parentheses, Bradley et al. 2006. All right. Now, if you have one work by 6 or more authors, it gets interesting. In that case, I guess they were thinking we don't want people to have to write out all of those names. So we're going to fix it so that if you have 6 or more authors, you only have to use the first author's last name and then et al. And the date for all your citations, whether it's the first or whether it's the last. I think the impulse there was good and kind and wanting to save us time, but it just makes it more complicated, which is sort of irritating. But anyway, regardless, 6 or more authors, you don't have to ever list all of those names. So just first author, et al., date, boom, done. Now, I said that APA style can be thorny and complicated, and I wasn't lying because, just as with just about every other rule on the planet, this one has an exception. So the exception for the first author plus et al. Rule that we just talked about applies when you have more than one source with the same first author, or more than one source that share multiple authors, which does happen because we have researchers that are heavily involved in one particular sort of topic or type of research, and they're going to publish a lot of different papers, and there might be, 10 or 15 different papers out there by the same first or second author, etc. So when that happens, if you have two sources, both of them have John Doe as your first author,